other chat questions have you found?
Uh, there's another good one from Lyrical Less oh 05. A question about, so when we kill all the plague hearts, uh, but we still see plague zombies around, should we stop seeing them? Um, I guess that's not about necessarily infestations. That's about plague hearts. Okay, sorry. I was thinking that was going to tie into something more with the infestations, because one thing
But
I wanted to mention
yeah, go ahead. And I think I know what you're going to mention.
is the fact that, yeah, infestations do kind of originate from plague hearts currently. Um, One of the things that, is in consideration is what happens then when you clear out all the plague hearts. I think in the PTR, what happens when you clear out all the plague hearts is that it currently falls back to a very small random chance that infestations may pop up. Um, but I think one of the things we're thinking about to kind of thematically make it make more sense is that it'll be a reduced rate, but I think that there'll still be a chance that infestations can spread in from map exits, essentially from neighboring territories, kind of thing. So that's not just a mechanic that just disappears from the game.
Yeah.
Um,
I love that idea though, just showing that like an area off the map has a problem that you've already dealt with here, and now it's coming to get you.
Yeah, like oh,
yeah.
you wish your neighbors would do a better job of mowing their lawn,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly.
Because all their weeds are just spreading over to your area. Ah,
There
those
was,
guys.
I think, a
Yes.
couple questions about whether threat level will
Ah!
influence how many hordes walk to your base. Um, Currently, that's not quite how it works. It's mostly based on how many infestations are within range of your base. So the more infestations you have close to your base, the higher chance that you're gonna get siege hordes sent to you, because they have to kind of be within range to spread to you. Um, but one of the things we are looking at, like, well, I think I already mentioned that the threat level will dictate how hard the sieges are going to be. Um, Depending, I think, probably in how, what kind of feedback we get and how easy we find it to be to take out the siege hordes when they're on the way to the base. Like, if it's too easy. We've discussed making it so that depending on your current threat level, they might send out multiple hordes at once, so that you have to deal with more of them. But that's still something that's still up in the air that we gotta play with and iterate on and kind of figure out what actually works the best.
Yeah, I feel like the threat of infestation hordes is really going to come about when like your base gets surrounded by infestation, and they're all sending in like siege hordes nonstop. Like taking out one horde is not a problem, but when it's just like an incessant stream of them, then I think that's where the challenge is.
Yeah, I think an example Geoffrey had earlier was because he had, his base was kind of surrounded by infestations, and he had multiple in-flight siege hordes on the way
Right.
to his base.
Yeah, like any one of them, it's not a problem. But then at the same time as dealing with that one, the other ones that are getting closer and closer.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the screenshots that people post of their map and how completely screwed they are by the number of infestations gathering around their base if they don't pay attention.
Right. Yeah, but the thing is, we want to give players the tools to like, or the information, so that they can nip that in the bud, which is just like where they're coming from, how many of them there are. If you just keep them under control, you just like trim your hedges regularly, then you shouldn't have to deal with the overwhelming number of infestations at any point.
Yeah, I mean, because you have multiple points that you can apply pressure on them. Because you can stop the hordes from reaching their destinations and infesting. You can take out the infestations that are generating the hordes that are being sent out. You can take out the plague hearts that are generating the infestations. So you really have a lot of options for, preventing them, and how you decide you want to actually, tackle that problem. Um, which is, I think we already mentioned, is one of the reasons why we're looking at making the actual siege experience a more intense and more engaging thing, because it is like that last, like, this is a fail case essentially. If a siege happens, it's because had all these opportunities to prevent it from happening, and you just failed to do so. Um, so I think, yeah, it should be a more engaging experience, hopefully, and like sieges should be a more obvious consequence for the player failing to act, and it should feel as such.
Yeah, I think right now, like with the randomly timed ambient sieges, the strategy is just don't be home when they happen, and it basically loses a bit of ammo, and then everyone carries on with their lives. And that's definitely not behavior that we want players to take when a siege occurs. And so we are looking into how to rework that so it makes sense for you to be home when a siege is happening. Otherwise, greater consequences will happen.
Yeah. The player being absent and doing nothing should never feel like the dominant strategy. So we had a question from Captain Memer. He's wondering is this feature going to make going to play into people's decisions about like what base they want to settle? Like, are more isolated bases going to be safer from this than like say the farmland compound? Or
I was just going to point out that question because that is something that we've recently been talking about, because that is totally the case, depending on your locality and what other sites are around that are festival definitely influences how easy it is for your base to be sieged. And I think, Larry, I think that your point of view, I think you were saying that that's kind of a strategy maybe for just choosing bases. So I agree with that. I like that being an aspect of what goes into deciding what base to take. Is how accessible is it to the Blood Plague is definitely kind of a fun consideration to have on top of all the other things.
Yeah, and it's something that players like already kind of intuit, like when they're sort of making their decisions, especially if they're new to the game and they haven't just gotten completely steeped in how the game works. You hear a lot of players saying, "Oh yeah, I chose this base because it seems safer because it's further away from the urban centers, and it seems like it's not going to get attacked as easily." And and so again, like there were other parts of this that you pointed out earlier that we're kind of leaning into player intuition about how the game should work and trying to make their guesses be true more often than they currently are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think that makes sense when you look at how our zombie apocalypse works, that you would expect it to work. And a lot of times, reading, players talking about the game, they'll say this is how it works. Even though we know behind them, like, it doesn't work like that. So like aligning it with those expectations just makes a lot of sense, I think.
By the way, I think we are observing one issue that can make infestations kind of tough, which is I can't find the last zombie in this particular
under the ground
infestation.
Again?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give feedback live on the air, but I'm having some trouble. I think the audience has already picked up on the fact I'm having a little bit of trouble here. Maybe it's this guy. This guy was chasing me out of the building.
Please.
Come on, this guy.
I think that's something we've also talked about, I know internally, is like, how can we help you track down the remaining zombies in the infestation?
Yeah, because when you're securing a building, right, we do sort of tell you where the zombies are if you're just a couple zombies off.
Yep.
But anyway, that's just that's not a promise for the PTR or this feature. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. I am curious if any kind of like base migration strategy is going to take hold once we have infestations up and running. Since it like targets your base, if it starts getting close, like would you ever vacate your base, move to the other edge of the map just to like get away from them, and then they have to like reach from the other side?
So, that's a really, I hope so. I hope we see players scuttling bases because things just get too bad.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. Direct Comedy Gaming wants to know, how hard are we anticipating this to be in the lethal zone? Are we expecting this to make the game harder actually on any difficulty? Or are we expecting this are we trying to keep the difficulty relatively stable?
I mean, it's going to be relatively, because I don't think we're changing the rate at which they spread anymore. It's, and the fact that you can prevent infestations now, because before, I mean, not infestations, sieges, because you couldn't prevent them at all before, and so it was just on a timer. So now the fact that you have more agency over kind of mitigating these effects, I don't actually imagine it'll be more difficult. I think it'll be different. Because I mean, there are other things. It's more intelligent. It's actively coming for you. So there's those kind of considerations. The fact that it'll take out your outposts and whatnot if it finds them. But just that there's so many other opportunities to prevent these things from happening, I think it'll balance out to probably be similar difficulty. We might even find out it's too easy to prevent this stuff. So.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the things that we're planning on doing. The next stream that we do is probably going to be Joe Swarner coming in and talking about sort of the tactics of the new infestation feature in the public test realm, and sort of talking with folks about what's gotten easier, what's gotten harder, and sort of doing a little bit of back and forth about that. So definitely don't miss our next stream, because we're going to be getting more into the details of what makes this hard, what makes this easy, and how do you play with it.
I think Crimson Exodia has a question that we also have.
Oh yeah. I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to repeat the question.
Yeah,
it's like,
go for it.
How is the Clio device going to work with what we're thinking? And yeah, I mean, it's something we're still trying to figure out as well, actually.
So I think for clarification, this is the Haven device that currently prevents sieges from happening at all at your base.
Yeah. It uses methods currently that were designed for the current, like sort of the older version of sieges, where they're a mission that's on a timer, and it prevents that. I'm not certain if its method of preventing sieges will apply to the new sieges that are triggered by infestations, that are triggered by hordes, or if it won't. And so it's probably going to be a little bit random how it works in the public test round, but we're aware of it, and so we are going to spend some time making sure that it's got a satisfying effect in the new world of sieges, in addition to the old.
Yeah, I think functionally we'd still want it to do the same thing, like in terms of how, preventing sieges. We'd still want it, just how we go about doing that might be different, and that's something we still have to figure out. But I think ideally it would still have the same effect.
Yeah, we definitely don't want it to, your hard-won powers that you got by completing missions in Trumbull Valley. The last thing we want to do is take those from you.
There's a question about how large of an area around your base the siege horde has to reach before it triggers the siege.
It did look like when we were playing that it just has to actually get within your base altogether. Is that how it works right now?
Essentially, it's a little complicated from a player, because we have these volumes that kind of designate what your base is, and essentially it's when the horde gets within that volume. But that's not clearly communicated to the player, because you can't see the edges of that volume on the map. So one of the things we're discussing is having it just be within, if they get within the safe zone of your base, because that is something you can clearly see on the map, and that's the clearest indication of territory.
Sorry, I'm trying not to detract from what you're saying.
No. Yeah, so that's something we're we're in the middle of considering, is like how we want to handle that, to make it clear to the player when, where is that line. And so I think the safe zone's currently what we're thinking of doing, because that's just very clear to the player. You can see it on the map, and then it would be very obvious when it would trigger. But yeah, currently it's basically when they get within your base, which is usually around when they get within the walls. I think depending on the base, that might be, some of them it's a little bit outside of the walls. So it's a little inconsistent right now.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And so yeah, I think yeah, you like getting within the walls in the current version and in the PTR is going to make sense. And I think the safe zone, because you're tracking these on the map, I think the safe zone makes even more sense. And so yeah, so feels like we're headed in a good direction. But a lot of what we do and a lot of what works here is really going to, like I said, depend on the feedback that we get from you folks when you play this in the PTR, which, by the way, it's not live right now as we're recording this, but it should be pretty soon. So pay attention to Steam and watch for announcements on our social media. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram, all these places. We're going to let you know when the PTR goes live, so you can get in there and start giving us some feedback.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to feedback about the pacing of Infestation ramping as a whole, just because we already know there's a ton of information we give players at the very beginning of a playthrough. We don't want to just load more on top of that. So we're aiming to kind of have it be this mid-game ramping threat that players have to start caring about once they are kind of settled into this survivable base, have a good number of community members and resources. So yeah, have we done that well, or is it kind of overburdening players too early?
Yeah, and just the general feel. I mean, with the system like this, one of the things that's hard with developing and testing is that it is a long burn. It's a slow burn kind of experience, and it's not like something that happens within the span of a couple minutes. It's happens over the course of hours probably. So it takes a while to really get the feel of how the spreading works, and how how often you're getting sieged, and how the experience of playing with this active blood plague threat actually feels over a long period of time. It's a lot harder for us to test that rapidly. So getting just as much feedback from as many people as possible it'll help a lot, I think. And it's part of the reason why we want to get this out as early as possible, is just so we can start getting just more feedback about how it feels over the long haul. Because like I said, it's hard for us to, when it takes hours to get, to really get a feel for experience, and we're doing a lot of we're doing lots of iteration, a lot of changes, and having to do that constantly it's a lot tougher for us, because we're a small team. So much help, much feedback as possible is great.
Yeah, exactly. Like, like you've seen this in the past. A lot of the features we sent to the public test realm, we were using sort of our older standard of like when something is ready, which is, it's practically ready to ship, and we just need to find out get a head start on the first bugs we're going to run into after it goes live. And that was kind of the timing we had before. But this time we're going in much earlier. Like I said at the very beginning of the stream, you should not expect that this completed feature will go into the live game, even in the next update. It might be a couple of updates from now. So we're letting you in really early to help us with this, because this is the kind of feature that that we only know if it works after we've seen a lot of people play it for a long period of time. Scott Lannon's got a question, possibly based on seeing a few things on my screen here. How will this change affect performance, if at all, particularly on the map with all the different infestation splotches and things like that?
It shouldn't really. I mean, because honestly, the cap in terms of infestations, that's actually hasn't changed yet. Really, like I think currently there's a cap of 25 in the live build, and it's still the same for us. It's just the behavior of how they spread is going to be different, and the infestations just existing elsewhere in the world don't really have an impact on the moment to moment performance, because they're kind of virtual at that point. They're not all those zombies are spawned if you're not near them. So it shouldn't really have much of an impact at all, because it's mostly changes in behavior rather than scale.
Yeah, I know the minimum distance safeguard for like distance between infestations is still in place too, so that you don't have like a whole bunch of them clustered together that form zombies when you get too close.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, part of it being more of an active living threat, it wants to spread out and cover as much territory as possible. So clustering up doesn't make sense thematically for it. It wants to cover as much territory. So having the infestations be spread out a little bit more, I think it makes sense there, and it's also going to help keep performance good, because you're not going to have 5 active infestations with like actively spawned zombies around you, because they're just not going to be that close to each other.